B.rad podcast is brought to you by MoFo, male optimization formula with organs to boost testosterone. B.rad's macadamia masterpiece, mind-blowing nut butter blend, now offered on Amazon. Chili Technology, temperature-controlled mattress systems for a good night's sleep. InsideTracker.com, offering blood, DNA, and fitness tracking data all in one place. And Organifi, whole food organic superfood supplements and drink blends. And please visit the shopping page at bradkearns.com for my personal selection of favorite products for health, fitness, and peak performance with great discounts for listeners. Here we go with the show.
Point is not what's the most amount of food I can eat and not gain weight and not be uncomfortable. The point is really what's the least amount of food I can eat and maintain muscle mass and maintain energy and not get sick and most importantly, not be hungry. The biggest issue throughout the last several decades has been we're really good at taking excess calories and storing them as fat. We really suck at taking those excess calories that are stored as fat and burning them off as energy the way it was intended, the way we evolved, the way our genes expect us to do that. Almost everybody has the capacity to be producing ketones. What they don't have is the metabolic machinery and the brain having gotten used to it. So that's what takes a couple of weeks. That what takes about 21 days to start to reduce this carbohydrate dependency and start to become metabolically flexible so that the muscles are starting to burn a little bit more fat and not so dependent on glucose or glycogen, so that the brain is a little bit more used to burning ketones, and so when it's low in glucose and blood sugar drops, there's not an issue.
Hey, it's Brad Kearns to introduce a wonderful conversation with my main man, Mark Sisson, down in Miami. And it is to discuss the launch of our new book, 2 Meals a Day. Just when we thought there was nothing else to say about healthy eating and supportive lifestyle practices, we always find something new to say. And I think the science, the user experience in the ancestral health movement continues to grow and refine. And so we learn more, we second guess things, we rethink things. And that's what's wonderful about trying to stay on the cutting edge and especially maintain an open mind and think critically about the information that we're presented with. My favorite recent example is the increasing popularity of the nose to tail carnivore style diet to heal inflammatory and autoimmune conditions, lose excess body fat, increase nutrient density of the diet. But a few years ago, it sounded like something wild and wacky. And as I relate a lot, I totally dismissed the idea when I was first approached by Danny Vega in 2017. He was talking about the great results he'd had eating only foods that came from a cow. I'm like, yeah, whatever, dude. And now, boy, we have to sit back, take a deep breath, and be open to new information. So in this show, we talk about the convergence of some really great science and great work by the leaders in the movement. Rob Wolf and his book Wired to Eat, talking about the hyper-palatable foods being the main culprit of excess body fat and metabolic dysfunction. Dr. Kate Shanahan has some great commentary in her new book, The Fat Burn Fix, especially pointing out the huge role that refined industrial seed oils has in messing up healthy fat metabolism. And therefore, if you can't burn body fat, you don't do very well skipping meals, fasting, and you end up defaulting back over to carbohydrate dependency. And then the breakthrough ideas from Dr. Satchin Panda, author of the Circadian Code, the promoter of the time-restricted feeding concept, that when you eat is just as important as what you eat, and also just smashing that dated notion of calories in, calories out. Of course, we've been talking about this for a while, but now when you're looking at the research from Dr. Panda and the research from Dr. Herman Ponzer in his upcoming book, Burn, where he studied the Hadza in Tanzania, the primitive living peoples, and measured their energy expenditure and is promoting this total energy expenditure theory whereby humans have a ceiling on the amount of calories they burn every day. And when they bump up against it, a bunch of adjustments and compensations take place such that the idea of eating less food and exercising more does not really equate with fat loss like you think it would on your online calculator. So I'm setting this up because we talk about some of these insights during this fast moving conversation, but I want you to kind of have armed with a little bit of background before we get into it and we turn it over to the interview recording. So, boy, I think you're going to love this book. It's got all you need to succeed. If you're deep into this scene and you've been eating this way and studying and reading the books for years, I think it's going to bring some interesting new insights and help you make sense of a lot of the confusion and controversy that's still out there. And if you are trying to motivate, inspire, encourage family, friends, and loved ones to embrace this ancestral movement, get rid of that nasty processed food that's causing all the disease and dysfunction in modern life, this is a great book to hand to someone else because we really provide that big picture and it's an easy read and it helps you really kind of zone in on some big picture goals that are doable and sustainable, like, cutting back to just eating a couple meals a day, doing away with this surprisingly destructive habit of snacking and how that interferes with fat metabolism and increases insulin production. So here we go. Listen to the Sisson. Enjoy our discussion about 2 meals a day. And you can get that book wherever books are sold. You can listen to the audiobook if you're interested in 13 more hours of Brad Kearns talking your ear off. I love listening to audiobooks. Lots of fun. And look at 2mealsadaybook.com. That's spelled out TWO, mealsadaybook.com, for all kinds of information and resources and bonus items if you take advantage of the pre-order promo. Thanks a lot. Here we go with the show. It is time to discuss 2 meals a day.
All right.
We've been at this now for 12 years, cranking hard, cranking out books. And every time we finish a book, we say, there's really nothing more we can say about healthy eating and supportive lifestyle habits, but there always seems to be something more to say. And with the concept that we're hitting on here, it feels like a real breakthrough at a great time because people are starting to get frustrated and confused. There's too many factioning and there's disputed messages. And now we're doing something that's simple, sustainable for anyone from whatever particular dietary preferences they have.
Yeah, I mean, it's, this is the natural evolution of our line of thinking, which goes back, 20 years in my case, and then 12 years of writing books, where we're trying to hit upon, not just an efficient way for 1 or 2 people in a crowd to experience benefits, but something that can be overlain and be used by just about everyone. And it started out with Primal for us, and Primal was clearly a better way of eating because it eliminated some of the crap, right? So that was like phase 1 was just going back to a diet that we're evolved to consume kind of our the sorts of foods that our guts are adapted to digest easily. So we got rid of grains, we got rid of the lectins, we got rid of the unnatural industrial seed oils, the processed sugars, and we came down to real food, and that worked great. And that's a starting point for anybody. And then we said, okay, what's the next level of this? Maybe it's keto. Maybe it's trying to get to a point where we eliminate carbs so much that we develop this ability to create ketones and offset the need for glucose and offset the need for eating carbohydrates on a regular basis. And it made a lot of sense because there was good research behind it in terms of neurological stuff, in terms of energy, in terms of, in general terms, mostly the medical community was looking at ketosis as a means of doing this. And then we hit upon the concept of metabolic flexibility as kind of the holy grail. So it goes now from paleo to primal to keto to metabolic flexibility. And metabolic flexibility really kind of encompasses a lot of different ways of eating, but the end result is that you achieve this ability to derive energy from whatever energy substrate is available on your body, whether it's the fat on your plate of food, the fat stored on your hips or thighs, the carbohydrate on your plate of food,
the glucose in your bloodstream, the glycogen in your muscles or your liver, or the ketones that your liver makes in the absence of glucose. And so the metabolic flexibility term became kind of the main holy grail of what we were seeking over the past several years. And I've really emphasized the metabolic flexibility part of that, and metabolic efficiency, and being efficient in how you generate energy and how you go through the day with a steady state of energy and not at the effect of hormonal swings and stuff like that. Then, we looked at what's the logical way to allow most of the world to achieve metabolic flexibility. Is it through keto? Well, that's one way, but it's also through the sort of the smart use of fasting and intermittent fasting. And I think the term intermittent fasting has, for a lot of people, been maybe a little intimidating, right? Like fasting by itself is like a word that a lot of people would say, wait a minute, I don't fast. I can't skip a meal, right? So intermittent fasting is a little bit of an easier term, but it's still a way in which we can go for longer periods of time without eating, and use that as a way to develop metabolic efficiency and metabolic flexibility, regardless of the way of eating. So regardless of whether you're a vegan or a vegetarian or a carnivore or keto or paleo or primal or ancestral or Western A Price or FODMAP or whatever, there are ways in which we can develop this metabolic efficiency, metabolic flexibility by using periods of time that we're not eating, right? And that's really what got us to this concept of 2 meals a day.
So eating less frequently now turns out to be as important, possibly more important, than nitpicking every single meal perfectly and maybe overdoing it and snacking all day on keto-approved snacks. We see so many processed products now. It's kind of funny from the starting point where, the science of ketone was from, starvation.
Yeah.
And now it's from a packaged snack that you too can join the club.
It feels like the whole keto movement has gone toward what's the most amount of food I can eat and not gain weight? What's the most amount of keto-approved snacks that I can consume? What's, the nut butters or the chocolates or the drinks or the keto cookies or the keto cereals? I mean, they're everywhere, and it feels like that movement has gone again toward more on the side of, as I say, what's the most amount of food I can eat and not disrupt my gut and not gain weight and not feel guilty. And so keto foods become this sort of guiltless pleasure. Like they don't have any sugar, and they have all these aspects of them that mimic the food that you wish you were eating, like keto pancakes and keto breads and keto and all the stuff and keto desserts. And it's like, those are all the things that we really shouldn't be eating in any context. So to try to make them up as a fake form of comfort food misses the point. The point is not what's the most amount of food I can eat and not gain weight and not be uncomfortable. The point is really what's the least amount of food I can eat and maintain muscle mass and maintain energy and not get sick, and most importantly, not be hungry. And you find that it's an amazingly small amount of calories and protein and fat and a little bit of carbs. Now, I'm not suggesting that it has to be a tiny amount, but I'm saying that when you realize that we as a society eat way too much food, and that probably 3 meals a day is 1 meal a day too many.
Not that big a deal. Only 33% too many meals. Yeah.
But now we're coming off of decades of having done this compressed eating window, this intermittent fasting concept where we go from, dinner one night to lunch the next day. And it's a routine for both of us, right? It's like I would almost never eat breakfast. Maybe if I'm on the road and it's a different time zone or whatever, but I almost never eat breakfast, the morning meal, because I'm not hungry for it. I have all the energy I want. And I trust that my body is going to get all the energy it needs from my stored body fat. That's the reason we have this amazing mechanism that stores excess calories as fat. The biggest issue throughout the last several decades has been we're really good at taking excess calories and storing them as fat. We really suck at taking those excess calories that are stored as fat and burning them off as energy the way it was intended, the way we evolved, the way our genes expect us to do that.
Because we keep snacking and eating and trying to control caloric intake and eating too little in some cases, but eating too frequently and throwing off this magnificent ability to pull from storage.
It's a great example. For decades, the mantra in the fitness community and the health communities was eat multiple small meals throughout the day. Humans are grazers. We're natural grazers. And therefore, rather than eat 3 square meals a day, people were advocating carrying your little Tupperware thing around with the macronutrients apportioned just so, 12 grams of protein and 20 grams of carbs in this and some fiber. And eating 5 or 6 small meals a day, never going 2 hours without eating. And it's just crazy that how the pendulum swings back and forth and how that was probably the worst advice you could give a human being. It promoted hunger all the time. It promoted a high level of circulating insulin all the time. It promoted a higher carbohydrate intake in order to balance out the blood sugar all the time. It prevented the body from ever going into a mode where it was going to want to tap into stored body fat to burn it for energy. It prevented the body from ever choosing to make more mitochondria to burn fat, to have more energy all the time. It had like zero positive impact, except that somebody in food science somewhere said blood sugar is the key, and maintaining steady state blood glucose requires that you have insulin all the time. It could be the American Diabetes Association. I don't know, whoever it was that promoted this, but it's this path down which we have gone that has caused so much pain and suffering for so many people. And it's about calorie control and portion control and sacrifice, and again, small meals and little Debbie snacks of 100 calories, maximum. That seemed to be the, again, like some magic cutoff point. And what we're saying in this new book, in 2 meals a day, is this is ridiculous. Like most of what happens that's good in the human body happens when we're not eating. And the more time you allow the body to repair itself, restore itself, burn off excess calories, upregulate enzyme systems that burn fat, engage in autophagy, which is basically cellular housekeeping, and DNA repair that really only happens in the absence of food, in the absence of glucose, in the absence of insulin. All these great things can happen when we get to a point where we are comfortable eating 2 meals a day. And so we wrote a book about, like, how does that happen? How do I get comfortable eating 2 meals a day? And it's kind of a joke because it becomes very comfortable. It becomes the most natural and comfortable thing that you could imagine. And if you understand that in only eating 2 meals a day, and in some cases 1.5 meal a day, and in some cases 1 meal a day, you are benefiting your body. You're enhancing your metabolic efficiency and metabolic flexibility. You are enhancing your ability to sleep better at night. You're shoring up your immune defenses, your immune system. You are probably engaging in some means of anti-aging strategy with the autophagy. It's such an all-encompassing strategy to be able to, regardless of your way of eating, to be able to engage in this concept of 2 meals a day and using intermittent fasting, or as we like to say, intermittent eating, as a strategy to completely change your health, completely change your body shape, completely morph into that ideal body composition that you've always wanted.
Yeah, it kind of takes the pressure off too, because those of us interested in healthy eating and diet and performance and optimizing, it feels like we've been compelled to go looking for the perfect diet and the best foods. And obsessing and stressing about it and putting these pieces together. And if you miss your super nutrition acai bowl breakfast, well, you're not going to get as many antioxidants that day. You better go looking for some pills to replace that. And now this stuff is now with science blowing it out of the water, validating that the human works best in the fasted state. The problem is, if you have had a lifelong carbohydrate dependency paradigm, you're going to feel like crap when you skip a meal. And if you're reading in a book or watching a video or podcast, people saying you work better in a fasted state, it's not going to ring true. So you talked about that a little. Maybe we can move over to the manner in which to do this properly so that it's graceful, it's smooth, you feel fine skipping breakfast. You emphasize that point that you may be eating fewer calories when you get healthier, and that's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
But it's all automatic and by default, rather than this pain, suffering, and sacrifice approach that we've been socialized to think is the way to go.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting that, again, people tend to get caught up in an assumption that I need X amount of calories. Like I figured my BMI and I went and got my Harris, score or whatever it was to plug in the amount of activity I do and multiply
the Harris-Benedict equation.
0.7 or 0.8. I can't figure out which it is because some days I run 10 miles and some days I run 6. All these different things are such minutia, and it's so unimportant in the overall scheme of things. And yet people have tended to live and die by the numbers, by calorie counting, by portion control, by macronutrient. This whole thing, make it, does it fit your macros? is another mantra that came out of CrossFit or whatever, with an assumption that this was all about calories in, calories out, and it was really, some simple balanced equation. It's far more complex than that. But at the end of the day, we start to realize that the body is an amazing mechanism. It's an amazing machine. We start to think in terms not of what's going to happen if I miss one meal, or what's going to happen day to day if I miss my macros. But we start to think more broadly in terms of trust that the body's going to handle anything I give it today and tomorrow and the next day, whether it's 40 grams of protein and a total of 1,200 calories, or whether it's 275 grams of protein and 3,500 calories. The body, once you become attuned to this way of eating, the body adjusts, and the body either stores or burns the fat according to a long-term strategy it has, not a short-term strategy. I mean, I remember back in the days when people would say, I'm on the treadmill and I'm burning 450 calories on the treadmill so that I can eat an extra 450 calories tonight for dinner, as if there is this balanced equation right down to the last calorie every single meal and every single workout. And this is not how it works, people. This is like we in the book, we start to talk about maybe 3 and 4 and 5 day periods of time, where if over the course of 5 days you get 575 grams of protein, I don't care whether most of it came on one day or none of it came on another day. You really look in larger spans of time, because the body is able to hold on to amino acids. It's got an amino acid sink. When you are fasted for any length of time, there's an amazing upregulation of protein sparing systems in the body that allow you to recycle amino acids that you would otherwise have just deaminated and peed out because you ate too much protein one day and not enough the next. So all these things come to play when you develop this skill. And the skill is being able to go longer periods of time without having to eat a meal, and being comfortable in the process of doing it, because hunger ruins everything. And anybody who's ever tried to diet will tell you that. I mean, I can only will myself to cut calories for so long until the hunger pangs take over and my brain starts to go crazy with the idea that I'm going to starve, and it's bad for me. So we can train the body to do that. And this is, again, in the book, we talk about the way to stair-step yourself into a kinder, gentler way of going longer periods of time without eating, and setting yourself up for success and not failure in so doing, surrounding yourself with sort of the kind of the healthier approved snacks that you can use to offset whatever hunger that is, or maybe it's using a strategy of going for a walk instead of eating a snack, and trying to engage in some form of exercise is going to promote some mobilization of fuel stores. There are lots of ways in which we can achieve this lifestyle of 2 meals a day that ultimately results in metabolic flexibility and metabolic efficiency.
Well, that was a pretty nice setup for the early part of the book. Maybe we can kind of navigate through the chapters and give the listener, viewer a complete experience. But I think we hit those points pretty well. That's not about calories in, calories out. And I have to say, our timing is pretty good, because this convergence of science with Dr. Panda and the time-restricted feeding, and Dr. Ponser with the amazing study of the Hadza, Tommy Wood and Rob Wolf have been talking about this for a while now, that Jason Fung has a lot of research in his books too, that if you try to eat fewer calories and burn more calories, you won't even lose weight.
Yeah.
And the Women's Health Initiative proved this, with tens of thousands of women agreeing and being very strict for a few years of eating 230 calories less per day and exercising 10% more. And the predicted calculation from the equations was that they would each lose 32 pounds, and they lost like 0.6.
Right.
Nothing happened.
Right.
The body adjusts by becoming lazier at rest, less motivated. Maybe your foot's tapping less as you're working, and you're just burning fewer calories, feeling more tired. There's so many complaints, and we field these emails from particularly a lot of females. Their thyroid's downregulated, their adrenal function is downregulated, because they're trying to go through pain, suffering, and sacrifice and control their meal portions and exercise too hard.
Yeah.
So I guess we can jump to the first step, which is to get rid of the crap. And this is also a wonderful scientific breakthrough, that if you just stop eating the big three, we call them, you're gonna have an explosion of health and get way up there towards your potential.
And I hope by now that most people realize that getting rid of sugar is like task number one in any eating strategy, and any plan that you have to regain health. Getting rid of as much sugar in your diet as you possibly can. And we've known that for a long time. But what a lot of people don't recognize is how pervasive and insidious industrial seed oils are. So, we've talked about this over the past several years, but corn oil, soybean oil, canola oil, these highly processed oils that are, first of all, pro-inflammatory in nature for the most part. So they're causing some manner of systemic inflammation in the body. They're not easily combusted. So they're not the kind of fats that are burned easily, but in fact, they're incorporated into cell membranes. And these are sort of dysfunctional molecules of omega-6 fats or omega-9 fats that are then interfering with the normal structure and function of an otherwise healthy cell. And people don't get it, because for the longest time we've been hearing the story that corn oil is heart healthy, or that soybean oil is heart healthy, or that canola is heart healthy, and they're not. And so that's another, sort of misnomer, fake news coming out of the 80s, 60s, 70s, and 80s that we kind of have to overturn and tell people, look, if to the extent that you can get rid of these industrial seed oils, you will be better off. And what do you replace them with is olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil, butter, ghee, lard, traditional sources of animal fats and things like that.
Yeah, that's a big one. Just to give the quick picture here, if you're consuming these oils, it promotes insulin resistance because your fat metabolism is messed up. And so you're going to kind of need those quick energy carbohydrates because you can't burn fat well. So you're going to eat those carbohydrates, produce more insulin. And so we have sort of these distinct objectives to get rid of those processed carbohydrates, grains and sugars. Grains turn into sugars pretty quickly after you eat them. You've been the grain crusader for so long.
For a long time.
And now the oils are really finally getting highlighted as, big public enemy here.
Yeah. So if you get rid of the oils, you are more likely to be able to get rid of the processed grains because you won't be as jonesing for them on a regular basis for that quick hit of blood sugar, blood glucose.
So if the enthusiast agrees to do this, there's different strategies, there's different people, habits, behavior patterns, but it's coming clear, at least I'm going to put this on YouTube, it's becoming clear that a really devoted restriction period for at least 21 days, like our book, 21 Day Transformation.
Sure.
You have to get these out of your diet to allow the fat-burning genes to start upregulating and to make progress, where if you try to cut back on sugar, the addictive properties of sugar, Dr. Robert Lustig talks about that in his book. Dr. William Davis and Wheat Belly talking about the addictive properties of wheat products will suck you back in. They have strong addictive properties.
Right. Yeah. So this is there's no escaping the fact that you have to get rid of these things. It's an elimination diet for 21 days at the very least, just to kind of reconfigure your metabolism. And it appears that although some of these changes take place in a shorter period of time, and some people will adapt within a few days or a few weeks, 3 weeks is probably a good amount of time for it to really settle in and for the body to start to get used to fewer simple processed carbohydrates. Will not be expecting these processed industrial seed oils, and will be better attuned from having your having eliminated sugars. For instance, the brain will say, look, I've got to build the metabolic machinery to use ketones because there's not going to be a regular source of exogenous glucose coming in from my meals every 2 or 3 hours. And so the brain starts to get very comfortable burning the ketones. And by the way, the liver, you don't ever have to have been in ketosis, and you never have to have been ketogenic to have a perfectly functioning liver that can crank out ketones all day long. The liver can make 750 calories a day worth of ketones if it needs to. Now, most people would never even have anywhere near that requirement. But the point is, almost everybody has the capacity to be producing ketones. What they don't have is the metabolic machinery and the brain having gotten used to it. So that's what takes a couple of weeks. That's what takes about 21 days to start to reduce this carbohydrate dependency and start to become metabolically flexible so that the muscles are starting to burn a little bit more fat and not so dependent on glucose or glycogen, so that the brain is a little bit more used to burning ketones. And so when it's low in glucose and blood sugar drops, there's not an issue. But if you don't do this work and then you start to skip meals, that's when you get the issues that people have complained about. That's when you get the keto flu or the headaches or the wooziness, because you haven't methodically and systematically gone through a process that coaches the body into making the adaptations over time, one day to the next, so that when you finally get to the point where you start talking about skipping a meal here or extending the period of time where you're not eating, it's done with ease and grace.
And it helps with that ease and grace to serve yourself some fabulous, lavish, high satiety, nutrient-dense meals so that we don't have to struggle or suffer. And even if that includes consuming a lot of healthy, nutrient-dense carbohydrates as you're trying to transition over. And I think that's the big mistake we've seen is carbohydrates are evil. Cut them out of your diet. Go keto. Fight through it. It's really tough. You're going to get the flu, but don't worry. It'll go away soon. And that's complete nonsense. So, I mean, I was one of those people when you took my cereal bowl away in 2008, my giant healthy grain granolas and non-fat yogurt and fruit. But I had a ton of carbohydrates every morning, dating back to my athletic days, my whole life. And that was my morning centerpiece. Yeah. Well, I had to trade that for a 6-egg omelet with avocados and salsa and cheese and veggies and bacon. And oh my gosh, it was delicious. But that meal sustained me for many hours. Yeah. Now, a year later, I woke up many mornings realizing I didn't need to make this gigantic thing to stuff down my face to get energy. Yeah. But to make that transition gradual and graceful, as you say, it means go ahead and enjoy healthy, nutritious foods. Yeah. We'll talk later about your snacking habits, because the goal one day is to sit down to 2 delicious meals a day and not need the other things. But when those hunger signals come,
Yeah.
you know,
And it's not just when they come. It's like, we're sitting here in my apartment where there's a refrigerator right over there full of things that we could go grab a handful of. And, and it's nut butters and it's paleo crackers and there's all kinds of like great tasting things they're right there. And it's just my brain saying, I'm not hungry. I don't need the energy. Why would I want to do that? So that's sort of what we have to kind of look at as well, is how do we bypass that tendency to just mindlessly grab for a snack, and because we could get away with it, or because we know it's not going to, in the overall scheme of things, it's not going to be a massive deterrent to what we're doing. But ultimately, as you say, if we can get to 2 meals a day, which both of which are delicious and almost hedonistic, because some of the recipes that we're going to provide in the book are like outrageously lavish and sumptuous and and tasty and satisfying and everything you want from a meal. I mean, look, I've said this many times in many podcasts that I want every bite of food I ever put in my mouth to taste fantastic. So I'm not going to slam down, a smoothie that's made with kale and chia seeds because somebody told me it was good for me and it's full of fiber. If it doesn't taste great, I'm not going to eat it. So that's again, part of what we're trying to do here is get to the point where we're not beholden to these snacks, and we're not beholden to, the hunger, not even the hunger pangs, but the thoughts of hunger. Like, oh my God, it's 1:30 and we haven't eaten lunch yet. And isn't it lunchtime? Don't I need to eat lunch? And the answer is no, you don't need to eat any meal. Really, you don't need to. The fact that it's there and it's available and you can, that's great. But I really want people to get that intuitive sense that my body's just going to be, firing on all cylinders. I'm going to be deriving energy from my own stored body fat, even if I'm 8% body fat, 9% body fat. I still have plenty of fat to carry me through a couple of days of not eating. I'm not going to not eat because I love to eat, but I'm just saying, I have the means to be able to do that.
You could walk to Key West with that amount of fat on your body.
I definitely could. I won't, but I could.
So there is some important discussion now of making good choices within the ancestral food categories. We've agreed to ditch the big three.
Yeah.
And now we have the famous list from hunter-gatherer times: meat, fish, fowl, eggs, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, and certain modern allowances. But within those categories, I think we
tubers,
spend a lot of time.
Starchy tubers.
Right.
Now.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can breeze through that. Maybe you can focus on the animal foods, which are so vilified still today. And let's say for good reason, if you look at the video of the pig farm, the undercover video of the nasty conditions, and then we're looking at distinctions in the areas of the most nutrient dense foods.
I mean, that's a whole different discussion about the way animals are treated in terms of raising them for food. And we object to concentrated animal feed operations, feedlots, and things like that. But if you have a grass-fed or pasture raised animal, that should be, in my mind, the major source of nutrition for everyone, whether it's beef, pork, lamb, chicken, fish, all of those are like critical to human health. Now, if you're a vegetarian and those are things that you don't eat, and maybe your next level of go-to would be, but I do eat some dairy products, or I do eat some protein powders that are made with dairy whey, or maybe I eat eggs or cheese. Which is what happened. Like my son, he was a vegetarian his whole life, but he got a lot of protein from eating eggs and cheese and that sort of thing. So he's, a lacto-ovo vegetarian. But so we would start with quality sources of protein, because I think this is really where food science has gone, and especially in this arena in the last year or two, you hear. Not just Paul Saladino and Sean Baker, but Rob Wolf talks a lot about protein, and there are no more real restrictions on like too much protein. It really gets down to like, what is going to satisfy you at a meal. Really, you don't have to overeat, you don't have to undereat. It's just like how much protein you want to have in a meal, and going to feel satisfied and walk away from the table and go, that was great, and I feel awesome, and now I'm good to go until whenever the next meal is, whether it's in 8 hours or whether it's in 28 hours. So we start with the protein sources, most of which now have some form of healthy fat. So again, if you've got a pasture-raised animal, the fat profile in that animal is going to be better than a feedlot operation animal would be. If you've got line-caught, wild salmon, that fat profile, that omega-3 profile is going to be ideal. And then if you're supplementing with some nuts or some avocado, and that's a healthy fat, and then the oils, butter, ghee, and the sources of fat are all again typically animal sources, but they can also be from some of the again the extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil. And then we get down to the carbohydrate sources, and the carbohydrate sources, as we've said, could be, to some extent, unlimited amounts of vegetables. If you want to eat a lot of vegetables as part of a meal, that's fine with us. That's what I've been promoting, the big ass salad for 15 years now. So any sort of vegetables, although we make a joke that, like, name me 15 vegetables that you will eat next year. You kind of get hung up around at number 12 or number 13 because there aren't that many. And then it's like, if you want to supplement with sweet potato or starchy, some white potatoes, purple potatoes, whatever, I don't have a problem with that. For the longest time, we eliminated legumes from the Primal Blueprint because we sort of were adhering to this notion that the lectins were problematic for everybody. Turns out the lectins aren't problematic for everybody. They're problematic for some people. So we started to let legumes back into the diet. So now I'll go out to dinner and I'll have some lentils once in a while, right?
I'm glad I wasn't that strict all along this journey.
Yeah.
Because new information keeps coming. The protein one.
Yeah.
And we've written and talked about
Yeah.
the dangers of consuming too much protein, stimulating IGF-1 and mTOR and increasing your cancer risk. But a lot of this research is coming from lazy asses who are sitting around eating crappy food all day. And oh my gosh, they got cancer and they had a high protein diet. So I kind of like the reasonability that you've come to over the years, and have always emphasized that, and the personal preference that's always been kind of your brand. And your blog posts say, "Hey, I'm not afraid to change my mind." And we've had videos about your enthusiasm for the carnivore nose to tail movement. Same here. It's captivating. It's compelling. It's something to test out and try out and constantly tweak and refine.
Yep.
Hoping that we feel good along the way.
Yep.
But if you feel crappy along the way while you're trying something, something's wrong with your approach. And those are words from the book. Like, this should not happen. We do not want headaches, jitteriness, binge backsliding, and all these things that indicate a flawed approach.
Yeah.
So there. And you talked some about that superfoods, but that's kind of a fascinating new strategy, is to go and look for the most nutrient dense foods on earth. They often happen to be from the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of a trend toward emphasizing those pasture raised eggs and grass fed steak, and maybe down emphasizing the giant piles of vegetables, especially if you're a sensitive type.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of these different ways of eating that have emerged over the past 2 decades have tried to be as restrictive as they possibly could be, and eliminate so many foods. And as you know, on the other hand, I've tried to be as inclusive as possible. So I've tried to include, even though I've recognized that certain types of food are problematic for a lot of people, as the research has improved, I've said let's maybe start to allow those in for people who don't have an issue with them, whether it's nightshades, whether it's foods that have sulforaphanes, or broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts, or whether it's those high anthocyanin fruits like berries. Find a way to let them in, and then if they're not problematic for you, then I would not see a reason to exclude them. Mm-hmm. We talk about the carnivore diet and the fact that, in fact, our buddy Paul Saladino, who's like, nope, keep the vegetables away from me and keep the berries away from me. That's worth trying for a short period of time, I guess, if you want, but I don't see that as a way to live. I mean, I get what he's saying, but I'll have I'll have a cup of raspberries once in a while, or a cup of blueberries because I like them and they're not problematic for me.
Right.
Yeah.
And the enjoyment of the experience
Yeah.
in itself contributes to a healthy diet. We have some commentary from Bruce Lipton, Biology of Belief. We've long been fascinated by his work, saying that your thoughts manifest your cellular function in your body at all times. So if you're sitting down to a meal with a smile, and that's why we go to fine dining and get that full experience, or watch the shows where the people are immersed in that. If you can become more connected to your food source, go to the farmer's market, talk to the people, buy the ingredients, come home, prepare it. It's a huge difference from sucking down the horrible tasting smoothie like Joe Rogan reported to you, and you challenged him on that.
Yeah.
It tastes terrible, but I drink it every day. It's like, wait a second. We got to put that smile factor back in the game. Yeah.
Sure. So, that brings us back to like cheese. I mean, some people have, lactose intolerance. Many people who think they have lactose intolerance have an intolerance to casein or A1 casein, in fact, and specifically. And yet I love cheese, so I'm not going to exclude it from my way of eating, from my diet. And it's and I look at a lot of foods like that. So again, I've let legumes back in to part of my diet. On the other hand, I have now chosen from my own personal experience to exclude. I don't eat a big salad that often anymore. It's not something that appeals to me. And I realized, when I thought my assumption early on was that it was the fiber, it was going to be good for me. I needed the fiber, and now I realize I don't need the fiber because
a lot of science behind that too, not just your personal peculiarity. But
and I found, and I looking back, and I had gas when I would eat a salad, and I thought, well, that's normal, and that's the fiber, and no, it's not normal, and it shouldn't be that way, and so I've adjusted my own eating, my own personal eating template to account for this experiment of like eliminating certain things and bringing them back in, noticing the effect that they had on me, and then making an adjustment to my diet that way.
Right. And, we can engage in so much debate and contention and controversy, but you could say what you want to say about any of this stuff. If you're suffering in some way, it behooves you to try some dietary strategies in attempt to heal. And one of the popular ones now is that the exclusion of plant foods and eating not hard to follow because you're eating these high satiety meals, and it might be a 30-day trip for you that does good benefit. And then you can reintroduce some of these foods that might be bugging you right now or choose not to. But I feel like a lot of people are stuck not knowing that their baseline, which they report as good, is actually
not
crappy,
that good,
and they don't even know what fantastic is
because
we haven't tried
like
it. Same with their exercise patterns.
It's interesting. You're right. How people, how their pain and their level of tolerance adjusts over time. So that and this is sort of a good news, bad news situation. But once you clean your diet up and you realize how good you can feel, and you realize how much energy you have by going long periods of time without eating, or longer periods of time without eating, and how much you maintain muscle mass, and how you don't get sick because your immune system is enhanced, and your level of pain drops because you're not systemically inflamed all the time. You get into this wonderful zone of comfortability, and then if you go back to your old way of eating, then you really notice it, and that's the bad neuse. If you go back to the way it was, then you start to feel the bloating, the inflammation, the joint stiffness, the joint pain, and things like that. But a lot of people are just oblivious because they've lived this way in this sort of pain. Look, I mean, when I was in my 40s, I had arthritis in my fingertips, and I thought, that's normal. That's just, it's an artifact of being 47 or whatever it is. And it wasn't until I gave up grains and the pain went away that I thought, holy smokes. I mean, this is a revelation. Like, what I was eating was causing a lot of my discomfort, was causing my bloating and my IBS and my arthritis in my hands, and my sinus infections and my GERD and a number of things that literally went away when I cleaned up the diet. Now, again, the bad news is, like, I'll give you an example. I had, my wife and I we were at a restaurant down below here that serves an amazing pizza. we heard it was an amazing pizza. We didn't know because we don't eat pizza. So last week we said, let's get a pizza. So we got a pizza and it was great. And then I paid for it the next day, So, you when you clean up your act, you clean up your diet, you do hit a new level of awareness and a new level of comfort that you can get just as used to the new level of comfort as you got used to the old level of discomfort. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And same with the hyperpalatable foods. I mean, I've lived a lifetime filled with inhaling all kinds of delicious stuff with the frozen yogurt trips and the hot fudge sundaes that I'd make myself. And even today, I love those popcorn binges sometimes where I'm like, this is great because I don't eat that much.
Yeah.
But I think if you can change from a habitual lousy eater to someone who really cares about and prioritizes their health and knows that, hey, once in a while we're going to celebrate, we're going to enjoy the heck out of it with full intention and awareness, and then go back to that baseline, which, if you've been watching from earlier, is a fasted state.
Yeah.
Then you're doing great.
You're fine. You're doing
right.
great.
Yeah. Well, I think we transition now with a deep breath into the mindset part of the book, and I think this is something that's really meaningful to both of us because we've had the privilege of engaging with real live primal enthusiasts, and I've seen them come up to you at the conferences sometimes with tears in their eyes saying, Mark, I'm trying everything, it's not working, I'm frustrated, I'm in despair, what do I do? You usually have a good quip for them, like nothing cuts you up like sprinting, but honestly, there is a lot beneath the surface here where there's still the pain and suffering, not the type of bloating that you just described, but something with the mentality. And so I felt like we could talk about that and know that that's an important part of the book. And changing that mindset from that kind of self-critical person to a cheerleader who, gives you that love and support you deserve as you strive to achieve a life transformation and a dietary transformation.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like so many people read the books and they intellectually get what they need to do, and they make the lists and they stick to the lists, but they don't really go deep enough into the why, into what it is that is prompting me to go off the rails when I do. What is it that's causing me to, even though I was good all day long, to hit the refrigerator at 9:30? Watching TV. What are the underlying emotions that are driving my tendency to sabotage my efforts to clean up my act when in fact I know it's good for me. I've read the material. I know what to do. I just somehow don't follow through, or I don't know how to do it, or I don't know what I can do that will give me the willpower or the strength to follow through on this. And that's really an interesting area to, I think, for everyone to look at, because, we've had a lot of success over the years with people who've done the programs, the Primal Blueprint, Keto Reset Diet, and so on. But, there are people who show up and say, I think I did everything, but I still can't shed this weight. I still can't, get to the point where I'm enjoying my life. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've led the way in this chapter a lot with some of the techniques and strategies. Why don't you?
Well, the insights from Bruce Lipton and also Deepak Chopra talks about this a lot, where we're arguably walking around just kind of unconscious or operating from flawed subconscious programming that largely gets programmed in childhood.
Yeah. And
if we get these messages and carry them with us throughout our life, even though we might be in denial in a lot of ways, and that's what's fascinating for me. I'm trying to go back. Did I have a lousy childhood? No, my mother and father were great. They were nice to me. They thought I was cool. But we walk around with stuff underneath the surface that we're not really conscious of how profoundly it affects our behaviors and our choices. One of them, especially in the health enthusiast scene, is this sense of feeling undeserving, and that you have to torture yourself with excessive exercise to the point of exhaustion, and food deprivation, or spinning out because you weren't perfect on your diet, so now you're sponsored by Ben and Jerry's all of a sudden, just because you're not perfect. And I see those patterns come up, and we know from being in the endurance scene, we should probably look in the mirror ourselves, going, "What the hell are we doing, torturing ourselves like that to run a faster time for a marathon? Who wants to run a marathon anyway? It's too far."
Yeah, well, we're operating under a mindset that more was better. That if you weren't willing to hurt. By the way, we were in a unique field of sports, which was not about having fun and playing a game and enjoying it with a teammate. Right. It was about managing discomfort. So what you and I did for 20, 30 years was go out and train to manage discomfort, whether it was doing a 20-mile run or a 120-mile bike ride or 40 sets of 200 in the pool or whatever it was. It was always about managing discomfort, and so that mindset, has served us well. I think it served me well as a competitor, because with that mindset, when you show up that day to the line to start that race, you are lined up with 20 other guys who are equally as trained as you, equally, probably as genetically gifted, who want it as much as you do. And really that day, and I know you'll agree with this, that day the race comes down to who is willing to manage pain to the greatest depth so that everyone else around them collapses, right? Well, what kind of life is that, right? What kind of life is that? Which is why for the last 20 years, whenever I work out, I play games. I'm paddling with dolphins. I'm playing Frisbee with my friends. I'm fat biking on the beach, on the sand. It's a whole different world for me now that I'm having fun doing it. But
except
the mindset,
soft spots were pure torture. So it was mostly fun until you get into the really deep sand. Believe me,
him out
people.
In the sand today.
We're going to film Mark Sisson someday on this workout. It'll rock your world. You can't believe it.
But the mindset, which is to beat yourself up, that's a pervasive mindset that you don't have to be an endurance athlete to have that same mindset of beating yourself up. This isn't going to work unless I suffer. Is one of the standard mindsets. Unless I make myself suffer, this isn't going to work. There's no way this process of developing metabolic flexibility can be enjoyable. It just can't be, right? And so the mindset, then you prove it right. Then you just prove it right. You make it difficult for yourself. So there are some strategies about how to lighten up a little bit, and how to view how to keep, again, snacks at close at hand. So if you start to derail yourself or go off the deep end, you can do that. Or how to just take a break and go outside and meditate. Or if you're at work and you're feeling hungry, how to leave and do a micro workout and just do a mini workout that not only takes your mind off the hunger, it actually accomplishes a workout for the day, and it starts the process of your body creating renewed energy, because it has to get the energy from somewhere. So there are a lot of these strategies that we talk about that are, again, designed to make this process one of enjoyment and ease and grace, and not this arduous task that I have to get through, and somehow on the other side, when it's over, I'll have lost all this weight. This is really about reprogramming yourself with a mindset for the rest of your life to look at every time you eat and every meal as pleasurable, enjoyable, certainly fueling up, but not something to feel guilty about or obsess over or worry about or hunger for or anything. It's like, I don't know quite how to describe it other than it's an intuitive realization that we come to that food is awesome. And when I eat it, I enjoy the hell out of it. And when it's not there, I don't even think about it.
Yeah, you're operating from a position of gratitude.
Yeah.
And the research has become a popular topic now. Dr. Robert Emmons and our boy Ben Greenfield wrote his gratitude journal. And you hear the term coming around. And I appreciated some of your posts about this, where it's easy to kind of acknowledge that in passing. But then when you actually sit down with a journal and write with your hand things you're grateful for, and making that exercise, or, a lot of people say grace before they eat a meal. Maybe you and I should start doing that. We forgot today, but something in there where you remember how much of a privilege it is to be able to eat a delicious meal.
Absolutely.
Instead of mindlessly running through your house, wolfing something down.
Right. Or to be able to do a workout pain-free, or have gratitude for those little things that you do tend to take
Instead
for
of
granted.
looking at your time and going, damn,
Yeah.
that was a crappy workout today.
Yeah.
No such thing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
You showed up.
Well, you're a fan of Jack Canfield. I know you went to one of
Yeah.
his masterminds and had that life-changing, what was it, a weekend retreat or something?
Yeah.
So we put little plugs for him in there, and these turnaround statements, which is such a cool thing, where you identify this area where you're struggling, and make an actual statement and repeat it. I believe it's several times a day for 30 days to make it stick. And I know you're big on the manifesting world, and your wife's into spiritual psychology, and it's part of the scene here. And maybe we could just mention that a little bit. How you're ready to change, you want to change. It makes sense what we're saying or what you're reading, and then to actually execute and put those concrete steps into place. How important that is for the human brain to redirect and wire new pathways.
Okay.
That's it. It's as simple as that.
No, you said it.
Yeah,
I mean,
read about those turnaround statements, people. Pretty fun. Yeah. And I'm guilty of reading something and saying, I got this. That's not a problem for me.
Yeah.
I'm disciplined enough. I don't have to worry about overdoing it with my workouts. Well, wait a second. How come I keep overdoing it with my workouts?
Yeah.
I'm telling people all the time not to.
Yeah.
Because it's too much fun out there and I get too pumped up. But all these areas where we have room to progress, take the steps. Take some baby steps and make a commitment to really execute it rather than paying lip service to it. And that's a really nice transition into the next section of the book about lifestyle. And sleep is the number one most important thing. And I don't think I've met anyone that doesn't nod their head in acknowledgement. Oh yeah, sleep's so important, and yet it's probably one of the biggest major disconnects of modern life.
First thing they drop out, the first thing that goes when they're making their schedule is sleep. Well, I don't need 9 hours of sleep. I can get by on 7.5.
Eesh.
I mean, look, sleep, as we said from the beginning, the first book we wrote, sleep is the single most overlooked opportunity to reaccess health, whether it's mental health, whether it's restorative health, whether it's recuperation from an illness, whether it's just keeping your sanity about you. Sleep is an important part of any health program. And when people ask me how much sleep do you get, sometimes 8, sometimes 9, sometimes 9 and a little bit more.
Oh,
and I don't apologize for that. I'm proud of it. Some people are like, they brag about getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. I brag about getting 8 or 9.
Okay, I feel better now.
What do you get?
I'm in the wintertime. I've noticed more lately. I guess living in Lake Tahoe and having a true winter, that I probably have an extra hour of sleep tagged on. This great book called Lights Out, Sleep, Sugar, and Survival by Formby and Wiley are talking about that disparate need for sleep based on the seasons and the length of light. In the summer, we can get away with less sleep and more activity, even more carbohydrate calories. And then in the winter, we need to respect that shift, even though we have 24/7 lighted summertime-like environment now. But sleeping more in the winter, and I'm hitting that 9 hours and not feeling like waking up, except for crap. I got 9 hours. That's got to be enough. But I think not everyone can do this. Maybe more people now with the changing economy and society.
With
but
COVID,
forget that alarm and sleep what you need to sleep.
Yeah.
And the research is really strong, saying go to sleep at the same time every night. There's no makeup.
No, it isn't. I mean, if I stay out late, which is rare, but if I do, I get up the same time the next morning that I would normally get up.
Yeah,
I can't sleep in. I can't sleep in. So for me, regular sleep time has been a critical component. Usually it's 10:30 to 7 is like my guardrails.
Guardrails.
And the sleep environment, right? So I sleep, on a chilly pad. The surface of my bed is 65 degrees. The room temperature is 68 degrees. I have a heavy cover on top. I sleep on a firm mattress. In fact, my wife and I, we have a California king size bed. She likes a softer surface, so she has a 2-inch thick foam pad on her side of the bed, and I'm on the stiff part of the regular mattress.
And a different temperature chili pad.
Oh, she doesn't have a chili pad anymore. She just
great.
Yeah, she just sleeps on the floor. So she sleeps, warmer. But I need the coolness of the chili pad. I need the coolness of the room. We have blackout curtains. I think that's really important. I have white noise, so we usually have a fan going all night long, or an air conditioning unit going all night long, something like that keeps the white noise going. Like my sleeping environment is so critical to me that when I'm on the road and I'm traveling, and I will move a hotel room because I couldn't get the air conditioning fan to be a consistent noise. It would be it would go pitter 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 pitter, whatever. So it's really critical, I think. It's certainly for me, but critical for most people to have a really good sleep environment, so that whatever amount of sleep you get, 7-8 hours, is quality sleep.
Yeah, and I like that research talking about no clutter in the bedroom, and how looking at a pile of unfinished work or an unfinished home improvement project, merely looking at it will trigger a cortisol spike, a stress hormone response that you're not even aware of consciously.
Got to do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then we don't watch TV at all in the bedroom. So even though we could, there's a TV there. We make sure
just for show.
Yeah, that's right. It's actually covered up by curtains now. But so that's, again, sleep is a very, very critical component of this. I think people realize that by now.
We also talk about rest, recovery, rejuvenation in general, and in particular, the age of the mobile device, not giving our brains any time to rest and relax. And here we're near your balcony where you could sit out and look over the beach and watch the boats come through.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that change of scenery. It's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And I realize you could just sit here and watch the world go by, and it would be enjoyable and incredibly soothing.
Yeah.
And we used to do that in decades past.
Well, and people would
now we're like this.
Yeah. Yeah. People used to sit on their porch,
right?
And watch especially
you
in
young
Sacramento.
Viewers. What Mark's talking about is a porch is a thing in front of your house where there were chairs positioned.
Usually there was a chair that had a curved piece of wood underneath it, and it would rock back and forth, and people would sit on that chair, and they'd whittle, and they'd have conversations.
Yeah,
and people don't do that anymore.
Yeah,
they have conversations, but it's like with their thumbs.
Yeah,
this digital device. Addiction that we have gets more and more out of hand in my mind, and it's really going to have to come to a head at some point, because the disconnect with people today. You go to an event with 8 people sitting around a table and they're all on their devices. It's just crazy. They should be having a glass of wine and chatting it up, and they're just busy with that. So we obviously talk a fair amount about how to address this addiction we have with devices, and how to allocate time and go on a device diet for short periods of time.
Love it. Yeah. And of course, we're talking about the primal blueprint followers are familiar with the exercise laws of moving frequently, lifting heavy things, sprinting once in a while. And today, it seems like they're more and more validated by breaking science, and this important emphasis now on just moving more as probably the number one health objective, beyond going and doing a devoted workout regimen where you're sweating in the gym.
It's crazy. The first move around a lot at a low level of activity, aerobic activity, that was primal blueprint law number 3, I think. Mm-hmm. And that's really what science is showing now, that you don't have to do, you don't have to count your calories. You don't really have to wear a device to show you how many steps you took. It's just about moving through time and space. It's just about the movement throughout the day. It isn't about burning calories or sweating or any of this stuff. It's about the movement. And then you and I have helped to pioneer this concept of micro workouts and these small little breaks that you take. So whereas you normally might have said, well, I don't have 45 minutes to go to the gym.
And there's no parking in the lot, usually.
Yeah, I don't have exactly 20 minutes to drive, 10 minutes to look for parking, 5 minutes to get changed, 45 minutes to an hour to do my workout, you drive home, take a shower, all that stuff. No, the idea behind these workouts, these mini workouts, these micro workouts, is you can take that 45-minute workout and do it in little bursts throughout the day, and have accumulated a workload that would have been an equivalent of going to the gym and doing all this, except you're doing it on your time. You're doing it in breaks in between phone calls or, moments of inspiration if you're writing, and you don't sweat because you're not spending enough time to actually do it to sweat, but you're doing the work, and the work is manifesting itself in strength and power and range of motion and mobility and all the things that we are looking for when we work out.
I think the best thing for me in my older age group now is that you're kind of flying under the radar in terms of the risk of fatigue, breakdown, and burnout from doing these difficult workouts. And when you do a micro workout, it takes a minute or 2 minutes, and you're not at risk of overtraining from that like you would be if you were in this gym pattern where you're meeting with your trainer and they're killing you for an hour and 15 minutes. And
you're literally giving your mindset to them, and you're saying, I give up. I don't have any say in this workout. I paid you a lot of money. You got to drag me through this workout regardless of how I feel, right? Versus, and that's happens in the gym, and it happens with whether if you have a trainer, if you have a training buddy, if you're in a group. It happens a lot in group training, whether it's boot camps or CrossFit stuff, where you're like got to keep up with the group. Versus, the ability to self-monitor and do a micro set or a mini set, and then just sort of take a step back and go, how did that feel? That felt great. Okay, can I do another one? Or can I do another one in 10 minutes? Or was that sufficient for today? And what was the last thing I just read? Like 4 seconds of all-out anaerobic activity as a sprint was just as effective as some huge Ed Coyle out of Texas just published this a few days ago. Like 4 seconds of full-on anaerobic, all-out activity, punctuated by a few minutes of rest, and then doing it again a couple of times is really all you needed to prompt the kind of changes in testosterone, growth hormone output, in myosin, muscle fiber development, and all these other things. So it doesn't take a lot of work. And I think just as we're saying, it doesn't take a lot of calories and a lot of a lot of food to keep you going and keep you energetic and healthy throughout your life. It doesn't take as much as you thought. It doesn't take as much exercise to be fit as you thought.
Right.
Yeah.
We want to move as much as possible.
Yeah.
Walk around. But that in-between area that you call chronic cardio is now proving to be an incredible disaster and an epic fail when it comes to body composition.
Yeah.
And these short bursts. I have the Carol bike. It's an indoor stationary bike. And the workout's 8 minutes long. And the guy on the website, he's wearing a suit doing this workout because you don't sweat if it's less than 8 minutes.
Yeah.
But you do two 20-second all-out sprints where you're trying to maximize your wattage.
Yeah.
And it's tough. And it's all I want to do. And sitting on a stationary bike for longer than that, you get bored after riding so many miles.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I go to the gym to read a book when I'm riding a bike. Yeah. I happen to be riding the bike, but I mostly do it to catch up on my reading.
Yeah.
Because it's so boring to do that. So we should probably...
Yeah, we got a good trip through the book here. Yeah. It ends with some really cool stuff like the advanced strategies for people who have really made a lot of progress and then want to cut up further and get that dream body going. One of them is cold exposure, which you and I are big fans of.
Fan. Yep.
We'll have a whole nother episode about that probably. But that's a nice package, especially for people that may be familiar with Mark Stigley Apple and what we've been talking about for a long time. There's a lot of fun juice in here that you get you excited. But I think also especially, if you are a big enthusiast and you've been doing this and you've changed your life from primal living, giving this gift to someone, on the fringe, family, friends, loved ones, it's very user friendly in that sense because we're not diving into this caveman style hole or keto craziness.
Right. It's somewhat agnostic in terms of the way of eating. It's mostly about how to achieve this metabolic flexibility using the strategy that literally relies on the programming that we have in our genes, in every one of us. And that's always been the beauty of what we talk about in our books, is how do we tap into this power that we all have, this superpower that we have to achieve excellent health by figuring out the right ways to eat, when to eat, how to move, how to sleep, And I think you really enjoy this book. I'm very proud of this book. It is the culmination of the 15 years that we've been working together.
2 meals a day. Thank you for watching, listening. Thank you for listening to the show. I love sharing the experience with you and greatly appreciate your support. Please email podcast@bradventures.com with feedback, suggestions, and questions for the Q&A shows. Subscribe to our email list at bradkearns.com for a weekly blast about the published episodes and a wonderful bi-monthly newsletter edition with informative articles and practical tips for all aspects of healthy living. You can also download several awesome free ebooks when you subscribe to the email list. And if you could go to the trouble to leave a 5 or 5-star review with Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to the shows, that would be super incredibly awesome. It helps raise the profile of the B.rad podcast and attract new listeners. And did you know that you can share a show with a friend or loved one by just hitting a few buttons in your player and firing off a text message? My awesome podcast player called Overcast allows you to actually record a soundbite excerpt from the episode you're listening to and fire it off with a quick text message. Thank you so much for spreading the word. And remember, be rad.